Hey everyone, my name is Kasperanza, and in this video we are going to be talking about envy and jealousy. And the reason why you might think, what does this have to do with monster epistemology? Well, if monster epistemology is about the limits of reason, I feel like envy is probably something it's a very important to talk about because it is the green-eyed monster a lot of the time. And the green-eyed monster arises in kind of these irrational ways. I think envy is very irrational and more of like this monstrous impulse that takes hold of us. So Aristotle said that man is the rational animal, but I would also add that we are at war with our animal impulses. And envy is definitely one of those things that we are really struggling to deal with. It's something that makes us feel ashamed. It's something that we want to ignore. It's also a very powerful force that works through us and drives us, especially if we're unconscious of it. So, yeah, I really want to do a video on this. So, jealousy, before I begin, let's talk about the differences between envy and jealousy because I feel like they're confused a lot. Even though I think they're really similar, I think they're both the green eyed monster. There is a big difference between them. So, jealousy involves three people. It's intimate and it's kind of relationship oriented. There's a dynamic between people that's happening. So, for example, if two people apply for a job and only one person gets the person who doesn't get the job is jealous of the person who does get the job. Or if two people are competing for a mate and the mate chooses one person over the other, the person who didn't get them, who wasn't chosen, is jealous of the person who was chosen. So there's a dynamic between three people. It's circumstantial. There's an event. Jealousy is intimate. So there's a sense of like both people really want something, they both see something, and they're both competing for something. So there's competition. It reminds me ContraPoints has a really good video on envy, and she talked about Snow White. And in Snow White, it was about envy. The evil queen was envious of Snow White. She wasn't jealous of Snow White because there was no third party. There was no king. There was no man or male to compete for. So jealousy wasn't involved. It was envy. And the other thing with jealousy is that I feel like it's very hot and emotional and it kind of just happens suddenly. And I also think it's a sign of grief or loss in the sense that you already know you're going to lose something and you're grieving about it. Or you see your loss happening in real time. So I think that's what jealousy is and how it's different from envy is the sense that jealousy, there's kind of like a hope or a sense of like you can get the job back, you can get the mate back, you can, like, there's a sense of like, what is it that I'm not good enough about? What is it that I missed? How come I wasn't chosen and the other person was chosen? So I feel like with with envy or I mean with jealousy, there's kind of confusion or self-reflection. Again, it's intimate and based on a specific interaction. With envy, there's it's between two people and it's kind of you're comparing yourself to people based on these external values or on a hierarchy. It's not like two people competing for a mate. It's just this idea that everyone is in a romantic relationship, but I'm not. That's what envy is. Or there's all of these rich people and I'm poor and I hate the rich person. So envy to me is more not so much that you lost or that you're going to lose something. Envy is about like, I'm already a loser. I've already lost. And look at all of these winners around me. Look at all these people who have more than what I have. That makes me upset. So a jealous person is upset because they didn't get the mate that they wanted. An envious person just hates people in romantic relationships because they feel like they can't get a romantic relationship. So with jealousy, I feel like there's a sense of there's insecurity with self-esteem, while with envy, I feel like there's no self-esteem. The person already feels crushed in some way. The person the person is driven to hate like romantic relationships or rich people because they know they will never get a romantic relationship or be wealthy. It kind of reminds me of Elliot Rodger, you know that famous, well, infamous, not famous, but that incel who he became a shooter because he couldn't get a romantic relationship. And I don't think he was ever jealous because there wasn't a particular girl that he was in love with or that he knew intimately or personally, and that girl chose someone else. He just hated romantic relationships in general. I remember watching a video where he was looking at the sunset and a couple sat on the bench, and that made him really upset. I feel like a jealous person wouldn't be upset about that, but an envious person would. So I think that's the really big difference. It's envy is it's about like I feel like jealousy is about standing before a judge, like am I chosen as a mate? Am I chosen for the job? So there's a kind of humbleness with jealousy, while with envy you are the judge. With envy you decide, and it's between two people. It's between you and the other person, and you're judging the other person badly and affirming yourself like I'm the person who should have the money, not them. They shouldn't have any money, but I should. What else? Envy is stagnant, and again, envy is kind of like this. It's kind of like this. It's kind of operating in the foreground of someone's mind or the landscape of their mind or their mentality. I don't think there's jealous people. There are people who feel jealousy really intensely, and then circumstances change or they move on. While with envy, envy is something that consumes a person, that grabs and takes hold of a person, and it operates a lot of their cognitions and how they see the world. Or envy is a byproduct of how this person sees life, how they see themselves and how they see other people. Envy is more of like an algorithm, while jealousy is a real human emotion. At least this is how I see it. I'm not saying like what I'm saying is objective, but this is kind of how I see the difference between envy and jealousy. Um, and again, I do think there's a lot of overlap. While you first start out jealous, and your jealousy happens because you're going to lose something. And then when you lose it, that's when you become envious after you've lost something. Um, so again, these are human emotions. Like they're these impulses that make us irrational, but they're also deeply human. And a lot of people don't own these emotions, but I feel like we should own them because they are a part of us. Again, jealousy still shows. I mean, I feel like there's a human element to it. Like it's hot, it's intimate, it's this sense of like I feel like you're much more attached to reality with jealousy because you can clearly see the value that you want and how you lost it. And then you're questioning yourself about, okay, how did I lose it? Why did I lose it? Um, while envy to me feels it's not about being afraid anymore. It's about like envy is more predatory. Envy is about you become the judge. You become the person who is deciding what's right and wrong, and then you go out and start taking things away or hurting people. This idea like if I can't have it, no one else can have it. Jealousy is more like, wow, I feel really sad that I didn't have it, but you got it. Like almost like congratulations. you got it when I wish I had it. I feel like that's another difference. Again, I think envy is poisonous. Envy is associated with the color green, as I already talked about. Well, not as I will talk about, not as I already talked about. Um, it's like a toxic mental virus that consumes somebody. It's cold and it's fixated. It's something that you're fixated on. It's something that just lives in the back of someone's mind. Like this is just an envious person. Um and then I also want to talk about like this is where I feel like things get much more interesting and its distance and sameness. So ContraPoints in her envy video, she made this really good point that we tend to envy or feel jealous between people that are very similar to us rather than people who are really different from us. So we don't really, if you're a poor person or a middle class person, you're not really jealous or envious of the rich because their life is so alien and so foreign and so above you that you can't even relate to it on any meaningful level. So we tend to get envious and jealous of people who are right next to us, like our next door neighbor, or again, if we're competing for the same job, that kind of thing. So we tend to, um, people who are more similar to us, we tend to envy, which makes a lot of sense. Like if you go on social media, if you go on your feed, are you really looking at Elon Musk or Bill Gates or whoever? No, you're looking at people who, like for me, I'm a furry, right? When I go on my feed, I'm not envious of Bill Gates. I'm usually envious of other furries, or I'm jealous of other furries, that kind of thing. Um, People who like the same stuff that I like, people who do the things that I do. Um, so that's just an interesting point. And then the other thing is, um, envy and jealousy exaggerates the differences between someone similar to you. Like, and it leads me to abstraction and fantasy and how and this isn't really so much about jealousy anymore. This is more about envy in my opinion. And envy requires you to dehumanize people. It reduces people to one or two dimensional objects where you define the person or you only care or compare yourself to this person based on one or two attributes, like their wealth and their beauty or their status. And these attributes tend to be very objective or they're not very clear or readily visible. Someone's wealth, you can look that up online, or you can just visibly see with the kind of pictures that they take, the kind of car that they drive, the house that they live in. While it's kind of funny, when we talk about envy, no one ever envies someone's humility or their good character. You know what I mean? Envy tends to, people are envious in this very crudely materialistic, well, it's always crudely materialistic. It's always based on like how big someone's car is. It's not based on like, wow, that person has such a good heart. They shouldn't have a good heart. I should have a good heart, you know. And I think it goes down to economics, which I am going to talk about. We tend to see envy based on scarcity, because what is economics? Why does economics exist? It exists because scarcity. There's only so much that can go around. While having a good heart and being a good person or having a good character, these are not things that can be taken away from you. These are not things that can be owned. You can't envy someone's good character, really, because you can always have a good character. I mean, now that I think about it, I think you kind of can, but usually I've never really seen somebody get envious over someone who has a great character. Or it's something that no one really talks about, which I think is really interesting. It's always materialistic values, usually. Um, but anyway, uh, in order to envy someone, it usually, especially based on wealth or materialism, you have to reduce the person to a one-dimensional object, almost like a cartoon character. Like you're magnifying. Like if you envy someone for their money, you're reducing them to their money, and you're kind of making their money the only thing that matters. And in a funny way, you're kind of turning, again, it's dehumanizing, but it's demonizing, or you're turning someone into a monster. This is why it applies to monster epistemology. You're kind of creating this monstrous form of a human being. You're you're making this someone almost like a cartoon character with your mind. You're hollowing out this person. You're turning this person into an object. You're turning them into some kind of an instrument based on your comparison and your worth. And it's also very dehumanizing to yourself, because if you're comparing your wealth to someone else's wealth, you also have to dehumanize yourself and make wealth the only thing that matters in your life, and you disconnect about what makes us human. There's a lot more to our humanity than being beautiful or having a lot of money or having status or having a lot of likes on social media. In many ways, these things are pretty trivial, but they've been elevated to the pinnacle in our society and culture for some reason. And so it usually focuses on a single positive trait. It ignores the negatives and makes it the only thing that matter. It doesn't take into account the drawbacks and the sacrifices. So like a beautiful person, for example, right? There's a lot of drawbacks to being a beautiful person. Sometimes these people are judged unfairly for being beautiful. Or I guess you could say for every trait, there is a positive, but there's also a negative. When you're really rich and powerful, there's often a responsibility that comes with it that you didn't sign up for. There's like this invisible responsibility that weighs heavily on your shoulders. You also have to be careful about, I mean, there's a lot of responsibilities with money that you don't realize until once you make a lot of money. It's like, oh my gosh, it has all of these drawbacks. It's the same with being beautiful or having a lot of status or being really attractive. And it kind of also reminds me, there's this really interesting philosopher, Diogenes, and he's like the dog philosopher, right? And he kind of made an ideology or a philosophy out of being homeless. And you could argue that being homeless is a horrible thing, and who would want to be homeless? But from Diogenes' perspective, being homeless is one of the greatest things ever, because when you're homeless, you don't have to worry about getting a job. You don't have to worry about making money. You don't have to care about social norms or social customs. So Diogenes, yeah, he lives like an animal, but he's free in a lot of ways. That's the huge upside. And that's the thing about envy, is that not only does it reduce people to one or two attributes and just like magnifies this attribute to a ridiculous cartoonish degree, but it also makes this trait like the most important. Like it doesn't see the drawbacks of having this trait. Or as another example, if you look at Elon Musk or Donald Trump or whatever, yeah, Donald Trump is the president and he's a billionaire, but I don't know, do you really want to be the president or like a dictator like Stalin? Like Stalin was paranoid all the time. He was afraid of getting poisoned because he stole all of this power. Um, or if you look at Elon Musk works all the time. Or at least, I don't know, he has a lot of time for Twitter apparently. But when Elon Musk was starting his businesses, I mean, he didn't live in these luxury homes. I think apparently he lived in his friend's apartment for most of the time when he was starting these businesses. I mean, it wasn't like he was living this luxurious life. A lot of the time, he was just working all the time, working so much that he had sleepless nights. And it really makes me wonder, is being a billionaire, is being super, super rich worth it? Is being a billionaire really worth all the sleepless nights, you know, not having a normal balanced life? Because you have to make a lot of sacrifices to become one of these CEOs or these really rich people. Like, you can't have a social life, um you can't have a family life, you can't have any hobbies. Like, your life is your business. That's all you have. And so in a funny way, these people really do live one-dimensional lives, and I think that's why they're easy to envy or to compare to, because they've already made themselves so comparable in this one way. Um, Envy is black and white. It's very harsh and unfair to yourself and other people. I think Kant makes this point, right? Because Kant, um, I'm not going to explain it, but Kant definitely would agree with what I'm saying. Social media is so it's really interesting, right? Because envy is this really negative emotion, and ContraPoints also made this interesting observation that if you look at all of the other sins like gluttony or greed or lust, they all feel really good. There's a very clear, pleasurable reward with these sins. But envy doesn't really have much of a reward that comes with it. Envy just feels bad. It just feels really crappy to feel envy. I mean, what's the upside to being envious? Nothing really. So, um, and and what's really horrible is that if you look at social media in our culture today, especially social media with the likes and on YouTube and Instagram, there's the you can definitely see a hierarchy that's happening. And in order for envy to work, there has to be a trait that you focus on and you rank people on a hierarchy, like likes, for example. And so social media has pretty much made it easy to envy people. It makes envy a very normal emotion. And it's something you really have to watch out for. Because if you're a normal person and you don't go on social media, envy is not really something that happens to you unless I don't know, but on social media and in capitalism, envy is always being forced upon you, and it happens automatically because what does social media do? Social media is always dehumanizing people. When people put pictures of themselves on Instagram, they almost look cartoonish because the picture shows them in some kind of luxurious car. I mean, typically a lot of Instagram posts are these luxurious cars or this luxurious house. I mean, to post a picture on Instagram to get likes, you have to, I mean, people literally Photoshop the picture. People, I mean, it goes through so many filters and it's so refined and it's so edited that it's literally a cartoon image of a person's life. It has nothing to do with their actual life. So you're seeing dehumanized, monstrous images of people on social media, which makes envy very natural or so easy to do. Like it does a lot of the mental filtering automatically for you. Because when we envy someone, again, you have to go through this whole process of dehumanizing someone and being brainwashed and falling for a hierarchical structure. But on social media, with the likes that are automatically on the video or the Instagram post, and with people posting very beautiful images of themselves, your envy is already halfway there. All you have to do at that point going forward is to just agree with it and start judging yourself and which is so natural, right? Because that's what human beings do. We compare ourselves all the time. So yeah, it's just really bad. The one of my biggest criticisms of social media and capitalism is like it just fosters envy a lot of the time. And is this really progress? Is this really moving the world forward? Shouldn't we have laws and regulations? Shouldn't we be questioning this? Isn't this something that's really bad? And there's a lot of really negative statistics online about how anxiety goes up and suicidal thoughts go up. And I imagine envy goes up too, obviously. And then, so here's the thing, when you start feeling envy, I think envy is delusional, as I explained, because if you have to dehumanize people and reduce them to these very cartoon objects, you're not seeing reality. So, envy, in a kind of positive sense, is a great way to help you get back on track in the sense of like, I'm being irrational right now. I'm not thinking clearly right now. My animal impulses are getting the best of me. I need to shift it back into gear, for a lack of a better term. So it's a sign of irrationality, and it's based on deception. I mean, it's really interesting. There was this really great quote that envy is kind of like it's kind of like fantasy turned inwards, or it's when someone's fantasies are, I mean, it's when your imagination and your fantasy is turned against you or something like that. Um it's it's kind of like well, yeah, it is a limit of your rationality. It's a sign of rationality. It's where your reason has ended. But I think the idea of how like your fantasy world is, I mean, envy can't exist without fantasy. You can't envy someone. You can't make this unfair comparison between yourself and another person without being delusional on some level. You need to be detached from reality in order for envy to work. Um, and then what's really interesting too is, and I think Schopenhauer was the first one to make this connection between envy and Schadenfreude, because envy is the pain at another person's success and almost wanting to take away that success when you act on your envy. Schadenfreude is taking a step further, and it's the joy at another person's pain. So envy is the pain at another person's success. Schadenfreude flips it or mirrors it, where it is the joy at another person's pain. And what I also find really interesting is that people who try to make you feel jealous or envious or have Schadenfreude, I don't think they really understand you as a person. Because if envy is based on fantasy, the pain at another person's success, and Schadenfreude is the joy at another person's pain, it really makes you wonder, do you really understand that person's pain? Are you intimate enough with them to really, because if someone falls from, if someone falls in status, if someone falls in wealth or beauty or whatever, yeah, you might feel Schadenfreude, but that pleasure you feel is probably, it's artificial, because that person who doesn't judge their whole life based on how much money they have or whatever, or if they're the coolest person, they're probably not feeling much pain at all. They're suffering. They're probably not even suffering the way that you think they're suffering, which I think is really interesting. So if you find pleasure in other people's pain, you're probably just as detached and delusional as an envious person. And then what else? I think envy is a waste of time. It's toxic. It's a toxic mental virus that you got to get rid of. It is, and I think it's people who have a really bad kind of philosophy or algorithmic belief in the back of their head that's just running, where they're comparing themselves unfairly, totally taking things out of context, not seeing their humanity, not seeing their journey. As Kant would say, every human being is an end in themselves, and there's the noumenal world and the phenomenal world, which means objects in themselves, like human beings, can't fully be known There's a mystery to every human being. And so I feel like to be a true humanitarian or a Christian, or at least the Christianity that I would align with, in the sense that human beings are made in the image of God, it's in the sense that human beings can't be fully understood. Human beings are ends in themselves. Human beings are, I mean, this kind of this individualism that truly sees the beauty and the mystery of every human being. I don't know. I feel like that is a very powerful and a very healthy way to look at other people, where you're not ranking them on a hierarchy or how much they fulfill a role or a function, or how much they are at the top of some kind of status or whatever. Where you can see the strengths of human beings in these very specific ways, and you can only see their strengths by truly getting to know them. And then you're always surprised by how they change and how their story unfolds until their death, and people go through transformations. And I think that is a very human, a very healthy, and just a positive way of looking at yourself and other people. Is that I don't really know people. I can't really organize people. I can't rank people based on their function or their status. And I think that thinking gets rid of so much evil and destruction and envy and bad perspectives. Um, and then again, envy and jealousy make scarcity obvious or exaggerated. Um, so they're tied to economics. So there's a kind of, I don't know, feedback loop between them, especially in capitalism. Capitalism makes you feel scarcity, even though scarcity, I mean, if you live in a capitalist first world country, there's no scarcity really. Everyone has plenty of food and water and whatever. But capitalism is constantly making you feel like you don't have anything. And if you're constantly made to feel like you don't have anything, what is the emotion that's going to swoop in there and take hold of that? Envy. Envy is going to come in there and make you feel like it's going to make you unfairly compare yourself to other people. Even though we all have plenty of food, we all have shelter for the most part, we all have a place to live, we all have access to the internet and books. Capitalism makes us feel like we don't have enough. And it puts envy inside of us. I'm not saying socialism or whatever is better. And that's very interesting, right? Because um, I'm going to compare capitalism and socialism in a minute. But so envy and jealousy probably arose because there's scarcity in the world. I mean, that's just part of life. Like, why do we develop these animal impulses of envy? It's because we live in a world of lack. There's only so much to go around. But be very careful of believing in this narrative of a zero-sum game, that when other people succeed, I have to lose. Be very careful about that. Don't believe that lie or that message, because envy arises when you have a lack of self-esteem. When you don't, again, it's part of it is because you dehumanize yourself. You don't really see yourself. And it's delusional. But another part of it is that you're not respecting yourself. You don't value yourself, or you don't think well of yourself. Um, and you unnecessarily compare yourself. I already talked about that, but that's how envy arises. Um, it makes success feel scarce and creates false competition and rivalry, which is why envy and jealousy are so important or hard to get away from. Um, but there is a big difference between capitalism and socialism, is that I feel like socialism aims to eradicate envy by kind of leveling the playing field. So I feel like socialism harnesses its envy to destroy the wealthy and the rich, and then envy kind of goes away. While capitalism is about emulation and improvement, if I see someone get a fancy nice car, I'll get a fancy nice car. And so there's kind of like this materialist arms race where we're constantly trying to one up each other, which creates a lot of these amazing products and these beautiful cities and these big companies. But it's also kind of again, it kind of creates this false sense of lack. It's like, what are we missing, really? I think we have plenty, and we don't need to compete so much anymore. So that's economics. And um, the other thing I want to talk about is envy is kind of like it's kind of like the lively sin or the deadly virtue. Um, I feel like envy, again, a lot of people are ashamed of their envy and they try to push it down or ignore it, but envy can tell you a lot. It's a very important emotion. I mean, I can't remember if I said this earlier, but jealousy and envy have a lot to do with values and the material world. So if you find yourself feeling envy, it's you should ask. It's kind of like a gateway or a monstrous door that opens yourself up to, like, what do I value? What is important to me? What is driving me? And you might find that when you go into your envy and when you compare yourself to people, you'll discover that, wait a minute, I actually don't care about these things. Like, yeah, I rank myself based on hierarchy of like beauty, for example, but maybe I don't actually care about being the most beautiful person. I've just been sucked into this game. And I don't know if Hegel or Foucault exactly said this, but what I can infer is that, especially with social media and the culture that we live in, when you don't participate in this hierarchical game of having money and status or whatever, it can make you feel like this scarceness of identity, like this ontological eradication. Like, you don't exist unless you compete in the system. If you don't compete for likes, if you don't post YouTube videos to get likes and attention, yes, you're not playing the game, but you also feel like you don't exist at the same time. So you're constantly sucked back into it over and over again. Um, let's see. So the color green is kind of interesting when it comes to envy. Why choose the color green instead of, I don't know, the color red or something? And when I think of the color green, I think of two things. I think of life and plants and growth, but also sickness and disease. When people are sick, they look green. And I think green is a good color in the sense that it kind of connects back to gargoyles, where I think gargoyles are throwing up. They just look ill. They look like they're sick and they're throwing up. I also like green is connected to poison. When someone is green with envy, I think it's because they've been poisoned. You can see the poison in their eyes. And it's the opposite of the color red. When I think of red, I think of something that's hot and boiling, while envy is, again, it's very suppressed. Not suppressed, it's repressed. People don't even acknowledge their envy, or they don't know how to channel it properly. It kind of just, so it's like this anger that's been that it's cold and calculated. You know, when people look at you with their eyes, they're not attacking you. They're not trying to fight you, but you can just see the boilingness beneath their face with their intense gaze looking at you and your success. Um, so, and this is how envy can be good. Again, it's a sign that you're being irrational and you need to look at reality. Envy is also a sign to get backtrack on your values. So, even though envy is kind of fantastical and delusional because you're unfairly comparing yourself based on the values you compare yourself with, it shows you like what you really care about. If you find yourself envying someone, they have something that you really really want, and you should explore that. You should ask yourself, like, how did they get that? So in a more positive way, um because envy is connected with values, channeling our envy can help like what do I do with my envy? Because envy feels so toxic. Well, you can admire someone. Admiration to me, and I think a lot of psychologists have said this, is just a positive form of envy. So instead of being upset at another person's success, you're very happy at their success and you want to be more like them. So they're like a role model. So people that we envy tend to show us, again, monsters show us the way forward. When we envy someone, they're almost like a model or an example of what's possible in the world. So as uncomfortable as it is to see a very successful person, whatever it is you may care about, like getting a lot of views or a lot of likes or being really beautiful or attractive, feeling a lot of envy can be a good sign because it means you live in a successful world with a lot of, I don't know, successful people. And sometimes seeing these successes in the world shows you that you can do this too. And Aristotle talked about emulation. Instead of envying these people, you can emulate them. You can not copy them. That's a little too on the nose, but like you can start doing what they're doing. How did they achieve their success? What did they do to get the whatever? So, envy, when turned into emulation, it can help you build a much better life for yourself. And when you are able to see your envy for what it is, because if you just ignore it and pretend like the monster doesn't exist, how do you really build yourself and make yourself a better person? Just accept it. Like, I envy this person, I want what they have. And once you do that, you can ask yourself, okay, well, how do I do what did they do to get their success? And it also kind of just um also sometimes you might envy someone and you might discover that, oh wow, I actually don't envy them at all. Like, if again, if we're talking about billionaires or just like a really rich friend that you have, and then you ask him, how did he get that money because you were able to face your envy, you come to discover that, oh wow, this person works all the time. You may have figured that out already. Because it's hard to envy someone when you start to see their humanity and what they had to do in their life journey to be who they are. Because again, envy is delusional and it's fantasy based. You just see the success and you don't see the sacrifice. When you just see the success, it's very easy to take it away. It's very easy to judge and to say, "Hey, I deserve this, not them." But when you look at the person's life and their story, suddenly you don't feel so judgmental anymore. You don't feel so like, "Oh wow, they should lose it," because you might feel like, "Wow, they need this because holy cow, with all that sacrifice, if they didn't have that, their life would be almost kind of depressing in a lot of ways." Like Elon Musk and all those sleepless nights, he deserves to be a billionaire because if he just had those sleepless nights for nothing, like oh my gosh. So you almost want people to have their successes because you see the sacrifice that they had to put into it. Um, So, and it again, it kind of goes back to what I said already. If you live in a really successful world, I mean, you kind of want to feel jealous and envious. I mean, and it's a balancing act, and it's something that takes careful observation. Obviously, if you're on social media all the time and you feel envy, just cut out social media. Social media is just making you feel like garbage. But you kind of want to surround yourself with successful people. You want to surround yourself with people who make you feel a little bit uncomfortable because that way um you know you still have growth to work on. You know you still have something to work on. Um and you see this with some people where they surround themselves with, I don't know, losers, and I feel like I'm just reducing people to objects, but it's really easy. I mean, life can be a lot easier when you're surrounded by people who aren't very successful because you never have to feel envious. You never feel like you need to change or to grow. But if you're around successful people, um, right? So anyway, I think I explained that. Um, and then I feel like another antidote to envy, which is kind of ironic, I think it's taking pride in yourself. I think one aspect to it is just recognizing that you're a human and you have a journey and a story, and you can't judge yourself or compare yourself based on these very crude isn't the right word. I don't know why I keep being drawn to that. But you can't judge yourself based on these very um uh one-dimensional attributes. You have to see your whole self and your whole journey, and you have to see the other person as their whole self and their whole journey. That's the first thing. But also you got to see what you have that is valuable. And you got to take pride in yourself in the sense that you do have strengths. You are a unique individual. You do spend your time on something. You do have values. You do have good traits, and maybe those traits just aren't easily seen by people. And that's okay. You just need to recognize that I do have values. I do have good attributes. Not everyone can see it, but I can see it. I can see that I have good values and traits. And that's enough for me that I don't need to compare myself to other people. And I think that's what a good aspect of pride is. And I also feel like just have gratitude. Sure, maybe you're not the most beautiful person or the richest person, but just be thankful for what you have because it could be a lot worse. You could have a lot less. And also, again, be thankful for the strengths that you do have, the traits that you do have. I can't remember, there's like another really great quote on envy where, you know, envy is about ignoring our strengths and focus and comparing our weaknesses to the strengths of other people. And you got to flip that around. It's like, I actually have a lot of strengths and I'm really happy about those strengths. I mean, envy is, it really is such a toxic, and it's funny because I talked about all the positives earlier about how envy can motivate you and stuff like that, but it really is toxic in a lot of ways in the sense that you're not seeing the beauty that you are. And I'm not trying to inflate people. I'm not trying to make people, oh, I'm this amazing person this whole time. No, but I'm just saying like you're not seeing like you have things about you and your life that make your life wonderful, that you do have good things in your life and you got to appreciate those good things. Envy is sucking away your joy instead of spending your time, instead of paying attention. And I really think envy can be boiled down to attention. And instead of paying attention to things in your life that make you happy, that make you feel good, that give your life meaning, you're paying attention to things that make yourself feel bad. And it really just is a matter of switching your attention to things in your life that are good instead of what you lack. Because we all lack something. Because that's just part of being human, is like we're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out. We don't have it all. We don't have immortality. We're gonna die. We're so focus on the things that you do have and just not worry so much about what you don't have. And if you don't have it, it's going to come up as envy and just learn how to navigate it based on what I said already. And yeah, I think yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching and yeah, bye.